but I'm so glad all of you are here. My name is Chris Hadsell, and my co-conspirator, as Bill used to call everybody, is Jane Smith. She is the person who did the editing and a lot of the contacting with most of you readers back and forth. And I then worked with Samantha from Rootstock and also Don Hooper, the illustrious Don Hooper, who not only created the wonderful cover, but did the illustrations inside the book. So we have, and since I haven't been here, I'm not sure that everybody is checked in, but I think there are either 6 or 7 or 8. I think there are probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there's 7 readers tonight. So what I'd like to do is have them come up and do their readings, and then everybody hold, oh, you can clap afterwards, but let's hold the questions until the end, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions. And now there are refreshments. There's some cider and cookies for afterwards. So, Shane, now have I forgotten anything?
Are you going to ask the readers to say a little bit about themselves?
Oh, yes, I'm going to ask the readers to say a little bit about themselves, because it's more natural than if I try to stand up here and do a potted biography of everybody. And I might get it wrong, who knows? So if you would, as the readers come up, introduce yourself. And what we're going to do is start tonight with Allison Hooper, who is right there. And then we'll go to Alan Gilbert. And then, is Alan?
Yeah.
Alan, you see, I haven't met some of you people yet. Normally I'd be here and meet you as you come in, but now I'm focusing. That's Alan. And then after that, we'll have Gus, Beth, and Astrid. Is Astrid here? Astrid is 15, and there's a chance, I suppose, she might not get here. But we'll see. We'll get through Gus and we'll see where we are. So we will start with Allison and then go to Alan Gilbert. And thank you all very much for being here. If you feel the need for a microphone, but otherwise I think if you just pretend that you're talking.
They're all my children.
They're all your children.
I'm yelling at them.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chris, for all your toiling with this book. Boy, Bill had a lot of nerve checking out without getting it done, don't you think? Anyway, I'll use this just for fun, see if it's on. Maybe I don't need to, whatever, it's fine. All right, hi everybody, I'm Allison Hooper, and I get to go first. I have just a 45-minute piece, and I'll talk about 20 minutes about myself, so that should take care of it. I'm Don's beautiful wife, and we live in Brookfield, and we started, I've been involved in agriculture for my career, making cheese and milking some goats, and now retired, but co-founded Vermont Creamery, then Vermont Butter and Cheese Company. So my chapter is called A Bread Basket for the Northeast. Vermont agriculture is dynamic and resilient. 200 years ago, Vermont was deforested and covered with sheep. Dairy was a cottage industry. The Back to the Land movement of the 70s transition into a wave of innovative young farmers seeking an honest food system and a simpler way of life. Our tilted hillside farms now battle for market share with Midwest farmers who have rich topsoil and handy feed. My prediction is that creative, innovative Green Mountain farmers will gain parity with our Western competitors. Vermont will be an important breadbasket for the Northeast again. Cheap prices and convenience are paramount to most American consumers. Irrationally, our society doesn't account for the environmental damage and public health costs of industrial agriculture. Collectively, we subsidize behemoth economies of scale in the Midwest and California because of our demand for low-priced food. Our agricultural products don't compete well in the commodity market, but our dairy farmers are buoyed by their proximity to Boston and New York. Their fresh milk for breakfast cereal rather than cheese for Pizza Hut fetches a premium price. Once our society rejects the environmental and human cost of industrial agriculture, farming in the Northeast will experience a renaissance. So, what is Vermont agriculture going to look like in 2050? What, with all the increased rain and flooding, mean for farmers? Well, and drought now. This was, of course, written before Trump was reelected to a second term. As we imagine the West burning up and draining its aquifers, Halcyon, Vermont will be a place with abundant water, perhaps too much. Our imperative will be to mitigate flood damage and crop failure with thoughtful land use planning, conserving topsoil, and diversifying our agriculture. We will see blended enterprises of traditional dairy combined with hoop houses, hydroponic greenhouses, and vertical growing. As our maples march north, Vermont agriculture must embrace the opportunities climate change provides. A longer growing season and grazing season could be a plus, but with it come new invasives, tree pests, flood silting, and corn crop impairment. Pressure to inhabit available land for the influx of climate refugees will be in direct conflict with the need to expand onto adjacent tillable land to produce food. If New England is to get to 30% of its food from the region, we will need another 1 million acres in agriculture. And today we have 2 million acres in agriculture in New England. While Vermont's challenges are not small, the threats to agriculture in the dominant growing regions of the Midwest are huge. Drought, flooding, extreme heat, wildfires, and intense weather events will create more frequent and devastating consequences. Without the abundant supply of low-cost food flowing east, there will be new opportunities for New England to feed its own. Scarcity would drive up U.S. food prices. Scaling and reducing time and distance to urban markets will benefit Vermont. We will all pay a larger portion of our income for food, already doing that. A share of that will go back to our producers, and improved farm profitability should attract young talent and investment. Pollyannish and far-fetched, we rallied in a pandemic. Chaotic, disruptive food chains stressed everyone. Our reliance on a few Western meat processing plants proved how vulnerable we are when they had to be temporarily shuttered when COVID spread through their workforce. Centralized distribution may be efficient until it isn't. COVID-wary supermarket shoppers were happy to discover local food purveyors in their backyard. The food was fresh, often healthier, lasted longer, and not more expensive in the long run. Sure, it was on a very small scale and hardly enough to alter patterns of broccoli consumption in New England. But it was a model that worked. What is noteworthy is that consumers swiftly changed their food buying habits in response to supply disruption. And consumer demand eventually will force a change in the purchasing behavior of supermarkets. In 2022, the National Gardening Survey recorded that 35% of U.S. households grew food. In 2021, a University of Vermont study showed that 60% of Vermont and Maine households grew food as a result of food insecurity. In a time of need, Vermonters will dig in and produce food. We will concoct a plan to house many more people in Vermont while protecting our productive farmland and insisting on recultivating fallowed fields and pucker brush. When we humans get down to survival as a species, wasting time denying the Nazi perpetrated Holocaust or climate change will be less of a priority for this anti-reality crowd. After all, the planet doesn't care whether we believe in climate change. It is simply, problematically, a fact that will govern all of our futures. Thanks. Pollyanna. A girl can dream, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So now it's Alan, right? It's Alan.
Never mind, thank you.
We're lined up hunting one.
Yes, there you go.
That's very efficient.
And speak up, speak to the
Speak
back
up
of the
loud.
room. Yeah.
If you can't hear me, just raise your hand. Think about that, right? So my name is Alan Gilbert. After I read most of this book, it made me realize what an incredible project this was, without my knowing it at least, of putting together a lot of ideas from a lot of different people in a way that just makes you think, which I think is what Bill Schubart talks about a bit in his piece in the back about Bill Mayers. And I think it's really true, and I hope you don't find any of the things that any of us have written as boring or something that is not of interest, because I think somehow all sorts of amazing stuff came out from this project. Short bio for me is I grew up in Pennsylvania Dutch country. I went to school in New England. I ended up in New England because a friend of mine had gotten a newspaper job at the Rutland Herald, and I thought, well, that sounds like fun. So I became a news person. I then had a chance to get a teaching job at a small university in Germany, and I taught American history and ways and grammar and everything else in a small college in somewhere between Munich and Nuremberg. And when I came back, I got involved with some other former journalists, and we had a writing company. Then I got involved with school stuff because we had kids. My wife and I had kids, and the schools back then, just as now, were having all kinds of problems. Back then it was not having enough room for kids, which is really interesting. And I became a part of the effort by the ACLU to start to make a claim that education in Vermont was not being developed, it wasn't being given in a fair way to every kid in the state. And eventually that's what the Brigham decision came to be. Because of my involvement in the Brigham decision, I got interested in the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, and when their job of executive director came up, I decided to apply for that, and I did, and I was the ACLU director for 7 years. And I'm now retired, and I've been doing some writing, and it was really fun to write what this was, because one of my favorite people in the world is revealed here, and that's Thaddeus Stevens. But let me go and read. The title is "We Can't Lose What Is Best About This State." Vermont's commitment to a sense of community and fairness is what will help steer us toward 2050. I see rough headwinds for equity as we recover from the political mayhem of the MAGA years, but I think Vermonters will do well meeting this challenge. In Vermont's desire to proudly showcase the common, and this should be benefits, by the way, the common benefits clause of the Vermont Constitution, it's the very same clause the state Supreme Court based its same-sex marriage decision on, I hope to see Vermont build a major new museum to shine a light on its possibly least honored but most important native son, and that's Thaddeus Stevens. Born in 1792 in Danville, Vermont, Stevens began his political career in Pennsylvania, fighting for universal education. At the time, there was no state outside of New England that had free public schooling for all children. Stevens rose to political eminence in Civil War America as the most radical of the radical Republicans working in Congress to ensure black people's rights. This feisty curmudgeon shepherded through Congress the important post-Civil War Reconstruction amendments, the 13th Amendment, which is emancipation of the enslaved, the 14th Amendment, which is protection of black citizens' rights, and the 15th Amendment, which is the right to vote. The only recognition Stevens gets in Vermont is a bread and butter historical marker on Route 2 in Danville that says he was born there and went on to do great work. It's an embarrassing understatement. Vermont can honor and finally give Thaddeus Stevens the praise and respect he deserves by establishing a memorial museum, this is my idea, that teaches the, quote, common benefits that Vermont has believed in since its founding. In the museum, the state could celebrate our commitment to equal rights for all people. Vermont was, after all, the first state to ban adult slavery. And then I have a little bit here about the fact that, believe it or not, I don't know if you remember this or not, but it wasn't until 2022 that we actually amended the Vermont Constitution to say that kids can't be held as slaves either. If you remember this or not, the action was unnecessary in a legal sense, but clearly important to the 89% of voters who approved it. So there was a lot of interest in that, that came down 3 years ago. The Common Benefits Clause of Article 7 of the Vermont Constitution states that, quote, government is or ought to be instituted for the common benefit and security of the people, notion, or community, and not for the particular emolument or advantage of any single man, family, or set of men who are a part only of that community, unquote. Believe it or not, that wasn't something that Vermonters dreamed up themselves. The clause was actually lifted, and I mean lifted, word for word, in 1777 from the Constitution that Pennsylvania, remember that was Stevens's state where he was born, that was ratified in 1776. The Pennsylvania Constitution was considered the most radical of the new states' constitutions back in that era. And Vermonters' founders wanted such a constitution too. Within Vermont's constitutional framework lies a firm commitment to community and fairness. It's for that reason that I'm confident that we will have successfully tackled some significant fairness issues by 2050, including healthcare reform. And I'm certain Vermont will continue its commitment to the environment, banding together with like-minded states to pool ideas and resources and problem solve if necessary. That might be an alternative to secession. I will forever be grateful to Vermont for allowing so many people, including myself, to find a life of purpose, learning, and examination. The whole state has felt like a laboratory during the 50-odd years I've been here. The state struggling with racism, I'm thinking of the Irisburg affair and Phil Hoff's summer camps for urban black kids in 1968. The state trying to make school opportunities more equal. The state leading in equal marriage rights. And the state continuing to try to figure out access to health care. Vermont has taken up many equity causes, not always succeeding, but nobly continuing to try. What are freedom and unity, after all, if not equity for everyone? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to get some more. Go ahead, Gus.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Good to see you. It's good to be here. My goodness, I feel like I was in Vermont. We've only been here 20 years, and pretty soon we'll be real Vermonters. I have a number of poems I'd like to read for you. One's in the book. Bill and Don picked a serious one. My other ones that I'll read for you, they're all very short, are focused actually more on Vermont, and they're what I call light verse for the most part. But here's the serious one, dealing with the issue of biological diversity. He saw it coming, saw the wreckage coming, wreckage driven ever on and on by the warming and the rising and the changing. He saw it clearly decades ago, and he cried out, thinking they would listen. He saw then that it was the heart that would decide, and he cried to a big world from a small pulpit. Young then and hopeful that words would matter, words could reach the heart. And so he wrote, invoking the whole life community that evolved here with us, life we did not create and over which we are not Lord. Years later, now as an old man, he challenged his few readers to imagine Earth without us. When asked why he would think of such a thing, he said, consider the wreckage gathering at your feet. Does it not break your heart? Now pause, he said, be still and contemplate such a world. Living canopies so vast a small squirrel can move in trees from the Delaware to the Mississippi. Oceans so fish-filled they appear to be paths across the water. Flocks of passenger pigeons that cast large shadows on the landscape. Great herds of ungulates grazing across cool savannas, and Earth thriving with diversity. But without us, it is a test, he said, of our environmental imagination. If we can imagine such a world with feelings of awe and reverence, taking joy in its existence, even though we are no part of it, nature for nature's sake, then we are ready to answer a question. What is a species worth? Perhaps just a small part of nature's tapestry. It depends on what is vital and alive to you, what your imagination sees. Place yourself, the old man urged, not as superior to nature, but as evolution's child, close kin to wild things, part of nature's flourishing, threads in the tapestry. And then you will know the answer. The heart will decide. That was one that was chosen for the book, and I'm delighted for that. I've been writing poems now for about a decade. I came here as from being the dean of the environment school at Yale, and it was a good decision, right? And had very little to do, so I started writing poems, you know. You might like this one. Black flies now have competition in creating a foretaste of perdition. I refer, of course, to the disgusting tick, the bug that made a good friend sick. They've now spread northward day by day. Global warming has paved the way. Before their presence becomes a flood and they abscond with all our blood, we must act with strong convictions to prevent even worse afflictions. Climate change is messing with the season, bringing ever more degrees in. It's not just ticks that's bringing you. Soon it will also bring kudzu. With kudzu comes the mighty diggers, the tender curse of summer chiggers. The human body is just delightful to all the bugs that get a biteful. Nor are our poor bodies immune from the torrid heat waves coming soon. Even rattlesnakes may be in store if you want to worry even more. But please don't blame me for warning. It's time for truth about global warming. I thought I'd give you a kind of a taste of 2050 and as I see it, the poem that probably of mine, I've done about 6 of these volumes of poems. They're endless. But this one kind of fits the title of the book best. It's called Next. A new day underway building in the shadows just over the horizon, piece by piece, place by place, stunning in what it asks of us. In cities not well known, in churches with half members, in councils long forgotten, in families once apart, in unions nearly crushed, in co-ops gone to seed, we soon see new life rising up, uprising. Many local initiatives now coming together as new systems, systems of ownership by workers, of healthcare and education without division, of needs met without consumerism, of economy without growth mania, of energy without pollution, of reverence for nature's miracle, of commitment to climate protection, of community and mutual support, of popular sovereignty, yes, democracy, of, by, and for all the people being people, people of all races and genders and religions, bound together by good laws and good fellowship, by laughter and music. Here's another funny one. It's called God's Own Black Flies. Tell where my mind has been sometimes. God walked into the garden. He saw that it was good, mostly. He noticed that horned tomato worms were decimating the plants and beetles were ruining his potatoes. He leaned down and asked them loudly, "Who the hell made you?" And in that moment, they found him. A natural poet, he cried out, black flies, you're here again. You found my forehead and my chin. Black flies, oh, what a pest. It's time for you guys to also take a rest." His good nature soon returning, God remembered his creation. He paused and thought and said wistfully, "Black flies, if only I could clearly see you as part of biodiversity." This is one about the season we just went through, or maybe I went through. It's called The Last Monarch, and it's not about European monarchies. The season of beautiful endings, life giving up another round. At first it seemed heart-rending. The fields turned to rusty brown. Life giving up another round. The monarch drifted to the grass. The fields turned to rusty brown. Fall has now, yes, come to pass. The monarch drifted to the grass. The maples glowed bright red. Fall has now, yes, come to pass. Nature putting herself to bed. The maples glowed bright red. Dying away precedes new birth. Nature putting herself to bed, my footprint too upon this earth. Dying away precedes new birth. At first it seemed heart-rending. My footprint too upon this earth, this season of beautiful endings. So last one, back to the climate theme. The snow's just gone. The moment feels unreal. The earth is pat down, gray and brown. A porcupine moves slowly through our field, headed somewhere between lost and found. Nothing too dramatic going on, so much of life seeming gone. Spring held in check again, spates of warming, asking when, the bears and sap turning round, wondering, do I now head up or down? I saw a sugar house last night, late but all cranked up despite, bright and busy with the boiling, beer and banter slate the toiling, these times worth remembering. Climate change is messing with the season, messing too with plain reason. The climate models are predicting that maples will be disappearing. What's left, what's green, we must hold tight. No, not going gently without a fight. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm going to read one that just follows right on your last poem. Emma Marvin is one of our writers, but she couldn't come, and she asked me to read her piece for her. And it's called 25 Years in Maple Isn't Much. And let me just see what Emma's biography tells. Well, she is the marketing, she's the head of the marketing department for Butternut Farms in Butternut Mountain Farms in Johnson. Farm was started by her father in 1972 and as a Christmas tree farmer, and then it has grown to produce maple syrup from the sap of more than 300 Vermont farms. In 2014, she was recognized as Vermont Maple Person of the Year. She currently serves on the board of directors of the Vermont Maple Sugar Makers Association, and she's a graduate of Cornell. So, on with maple trees. My husband asked me, "How long in the future are you looking?" "Oh, not long, 2050, I said. In today's world, with the rapid pace of change, technology, environment, society, 25 years could be enough time to reshape the world into something that is nearly unimaginable today. But when you're thinking in terms of the lifespan of a maple tree or the centuries of tradition of harvesting maple sap, 25 years isn't long at all. While our forests will still be recognizable in 2050, they will be different. The makeup of our species is shifting due to increased severity of weather events, more frequent flooding, high winds, drought conditions, and ice storms, as well as invasive species and disease. We've seen the loss of the American chestnut, the American elm, and the butternut, and over the coming decades we'll lose much of the ash to emerald ash borer, and hemlock to hemlock woolly, adlid, and balsam to the balsam woolly adlid. That's a new word to me. Regeneration of today's common species will favor those that thrive under new and changing conditions. Thus, the predominance of maple, whether sugar or red, may shift, but maples will continue to be part of Vermont's forested landscape in 2050. Maple seeds that fall in 2025 and successfully germinate will be 25 years old in 2050, still 15 years away from being tapped. The way sap is gathered and concentrated in 2050 will likely also look very different. The art of sugar making started with hollowed out logs and heating the sap with hot stones. Then we went to buckets and kettles, to tubing and evaporators, and today we use vacuum pumps, remote sensors, and reverse osmosis. Guided by good stewardship and a desire to keep syrup making feasible amid economic and climatic changes, and innovations from the woods to the sugar house will abound. It's the combination of deeply rooted tradition paired with ingenuity that will support and sustain a vibrant, though maybe different looking, sugar season. Research shows that the sugaring season is starting earlier and ending earlier each year. The total length of the season is shrinking. Waiting till town meeting day to start tapping has already fallen away, and many sugar makers now head into the woods in January, December, and even earlier. Old rules of thumb will be replaced with new markers of seasonal milestones. Will spring peepers be the harbingers of the season's end? In the world of maple syrup production, uncertainty is about the only thing that is certain. When will the season start? What kind of year will it be? What quality product will be produced? How sweet will it be? How much sap will we get? How many good sap runs will there be? The simple answer to all these questions is, and always has been, we don't know. And we won't know until the season is over. Some might wonder, well, why in the world would anyone undertake a harvest with such little certainty? And yet, we sugar maples makers do. There's something incredibly special about taking a tiny bit of the sun's stored energy from a plant and transforming it into a delicious sweetener without diminishing the resource. In today's world, wild harvested foods are rare. Among them, few are as geographically constrained in their production and as widely shared as maple syrup. Beyond the opportunity to share maple syrup with the world, Vermont sugar makers possess a unique sense of shared identity. What we do is deeply rooted. We have a rare and enduring connection between people and place, especially in the face of uncertainty and hardship. This, combined with a desire to create something from nothing at a time of year when the world is just beginning to wake, pulls us through each season and will carry us into 2050 and beyond. Oh, yes, next. Hold on. Next, we have, are you ready? Samantha is going to read for Angela Shambaugh. Actually, don't remember the name of the piece, but she's going to read this piece. Then we'll have Ben Doyle, and then we will wrap up with our own Don Hooper.
Hi everyone, I'm Samantha Kolber. I'm actually the publisher of Rootstock Publishing, and so I thank you all for supporting this book so much. It's been a real pleasure to work on it. Thank you to Jane and Chris for bringing this to Rootstock and for shepherding Bill's vision. I think he would be really pleased. Thank you to Bear Pond Books for being here. Thanks, Claire. Please support your local bookstore. Buy a book. What's really cool about when you buy a book through Bear Pond Books, you're supporting a trifecta of local producers and artists. You're supporting our local bookstore, you're supporting me and my business, Rootstock Publishing, and you're supporting the contributing writers, the editors, and everybody who brought this book to fruition. And thank you so much to all the writers who contributed. I'm going to read for Angela Shambaugh. Am I saying that correct? She is a botanist, I believe, an aquatic botanist. So I'll read her bio, or aquatic biologist, sorry. Yeah, aquatic and botanist doesn't really go together. So I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any scientific words that are in here. I don't recall any words that I might not know. But Angela Shambaugh is an aquatic biologist who moved to Vermont in 1986 to work in the fields of water quality and phytoplankton ecology for private companies. She worked for the University of Vermont and the State of Vermont's Department of Environmental Conservation. She retired in 2020 from the Lakes and Ponds Management and Protection Program, where she helped develop, a cyanobacteria monitoring protocol for Lake Champlain. And this is now the program used for all bodies of water in Vermont. So here's her take on 2050 in Vermont. It's called When Less Becomes More. What is 25 years, really? In human terms, it is the time it takes a baby to become an adult. It's potentially a quarter of your time on this planet. Or, like me, perhaps you've reached the age when you are not sure you'll still be here in 2050. It's an amount of time that seems far in the future, yet will be here before you know it. For decades, I've watched the monarch butterfly populations dwindle to the point that they are uncommon in the fall and may disappear altogether in Vermont. I fear that in 2050, there will be no moose here and that the maple trees will be scarce. I think about air and ocean temperatures, knowing they drive the climate in ways we have long taken for granted. A warming Vermont will require us to adapt. For every glorious summer day by the lake in late September, there will be fewer ice fishing days in winter, and more cyanobacteria blooms in fall. Every cold-loving plant that I will miss in my garden can be replaced with a new flower or vegetable that I will savor. I might not get to see a monarch, but giant swallowtail butterflies will be a treat. Hot summer days will be followed by heavy rain. There will be more thunderstorms, which I love, but also more chances for damaging winds and flooding. I remind myself that all living things in the world must adapt to change if they are to survive. And that brings me to what I really want to say. As a biologist and naturalist, I know that change happens all around us all the time. Sometimes we are the cause. We don't always see that at first, but once we make the connection, we are faced with a choice to continue our old patterns or not. The energy and resources we use to feed, clothe, and house the sheer number of humans on this planet are causing great change. We are breaking the natural cycles of storage and reuse that have kept this planet humming along. We are taking resources and space away from other living things on the planet, making it impossible for them to survive. We dig, chop, and knowingly spread poisons to claim room for ourselves. If we are not to save the planet, we need to make a choice to reduce, and do it now. Clean energy and green technology will only get us so far. We must think about recycling and reducing every minute with everything we do. Reduce the amount of electricity used in our homes, reduce the miles we drive in our cars, reduce the number of things we purchase above and beyond what we need to comfortably meet our basic needs. Reduce the chemicals we spray on our fields and lawns, and those we use in our homes and businesses. The Vermont I envision in 2050 is a place where less is more. There will be fewer cars and more public transportation options. I hope that's true for our state. There will be more local businesses producing the durable goods we need and fewer selling plastic disposable things we don't need. There will be more people living a comfortable life with less and fewer who struggle to get a roof over their heads. There will be more trees and plants around us. Furred, feathered, winged, and finned creatures will thrive everywhere. Insect life will too. They might not be the bugs we know now, but we will share space and adapt to a changing world alongside them. Humans are the only creatures with the ability to use and alter their environment at a scale that includes the entire planet. Life on this earth will always adjust to new environmental conditions, shedding what cannot adapt along the way. We need to find the strength, the courage, and the hope to adapt starting right now. Many say that Vermont can't do it alone. They are right, but that shouldn't stop us. We can lead by example. Thank you.
Yeah. Tough act to follow. Hi, everyone. My name's Ben Doyle. I live here in Montpelier. I work for an organization called the Preservation Trust of Vermont. I just want to say thanks to Chris and Jane for making this happen, and they've already heard me tell this story, but I didn't really know Bill that well. I'd met him a couple times, and when he called me up, he said, he explained this project, and he said, do you want to write in it? And I immediately was like, oh, that's really exciting and flattering. Of course I want to do that. And then I had a second thought, and I thought, well, wait, who else is writing in this? And I asked him, I said, who's because I was thinking, I don't want to be a member of a club that would have me as a member kind of thing. And I asked him, I said, well, who else is writing? And he said, well, I'm not going to tell you that. You either have to decide to do it or don't do it, but I'm not telling you who else is doing it. And, but I'm, once the book came out and I saw all the people in there that many of whom I've worked with or really respect, I'm just really glad to be in that group. So anyway, here's my piece. Vermonters are better at remembering the future than they are at predicting it. We tend to think about the days to come through the images and vernacular of the past. This impulse results in a mixed bag. For one thing, it makes us suspicious of the new. We're on guard against anything flashy, gaudy, disposable, plastic, or from away, what they used to call wooden nickels. On a good day in Vermont, this qualifies as benevolent vigilance against bullshit. On a bad one, self-righteous provincialism. Either way, Vermont's affection for the past spins a through line that grounds all of us to a sense of place across time. Who hasn't encountered a wall or cellar hole in the woods and thought of the people whose hands laid the stones? Who hasn't wondered what their lives entailed, what their quiet joys and sorrows were, their fears and hopes? Not to be overly dramatic, something very un-Vermonty, but in 2025, two roads really are diverging in a yellow wood. Can Vermont survive the demand of the modern world to homogenize and commodify? What about the alternative posed by the local curmudgeon, afraid of change, a pickled place that resists innovation, new voices, new people? Vermonters must reblaze a trail and think of ourselves not as defenders of a way of life under attack, but as a bridge between what has connected people to this place for generations and the future, a bridge that will require remembrance and imagination. At the Preservation Trust of Vermont, where I work, we build community through the preservation of historic buildings, villages, and downtowns. That's a long way of saying we help people save the buildings they love. What I find continually fascinating and inspiring are the people I meet who are interested in preserving a historic building, be it a general store, town hall, schoolhouse, or barn, not just because these things have been around for a while, but because the possibilities they present for the future. The magic created by the creative tension between the old and the new. In Hardwick, that means that the building that once housed the printing press of a local newspaper, with the help of a new generation, can evolve into the Civic Standard, an art project, a church of theater, a free supper club, and a public living room for cozy conversations. Or in Bellows Falls, the Miss Bellows Falls Diner can once again serve hash and eggs, but with a new business model based on community ownership that circulates wealth locally and is sustainable. Or the Village Church in Peacham, a focal point of community life for more than 2 centuries that now houses a child care center. In Calais, it's a community that doesn't just gripe about a dollar store invasion. It strikes first and reopens an 1850s general store that now has Wi-Fi. What was can be again and be different enough to accommodate change. By necessity, this work favors optimism, the earnest belief that a cultural shift is afoot, that authenticity, humility, integrity, care are on the ascendance, the conviction that shallow commercialism is going to go the way of disco, that the revolution of values called for by Dr. King a generation ago could start in an unlikely a place as Vermont. It's for that reason that the optimists will find their way here, just as they did at the beginning of the 19th century or at the end of the 20th. Yesterday's back to the landers might be today's boomers, but they also set an example for a generation looking for old ways of community connection made new. Oh, pioneers. What will Vermont look like in 2050? Familiar, but better.
Okay. Oh, Astrid, come. Oh, good. I didn't know you've gotten here. So first, just say a few words about who you are. That'd be great.
Hi everybody, my name's Astrid Longstreth. I'm a sophomore at Mount Mansfield Union High School, and I'm part of Young Writers Project, which is an online collaborative of teens where they can get their writing and visual art published. So here is my piece about Vermont in 2050. It's called Vermont's World Tree. I've seen a million sunsets and sunrises, yet each day still dawns with new surprises. As the sun... Okay. As the sun peaks its golden rays over the green mountains, Vermont's future stretches out with new horizons. From seedling to sapling to towering maple, I've been here. I stand on this hill, roots planted forevermore, watching the world go by. Now we stand halfway through the 21st century. A new age is being born. I remember when the summers were milder, the autumns brighter, and the winters colder. Yet not all hope seems lost as turbines spin upon distant mountain tops, harnessing the wind in a loop of eternity. They are dystopian yet beautiful, as an abstract sculpture is to a child. Sometimes people walk by me, hand-in-hand lovers, men with women, men with men, woman with woman. To me, there is no difference. There are children as well, little boys and girls hand in hand with parents, a diversity as beautiful as a rainbow through the downpour. Once upon a time, a seed was planted. Once upon a time, it was beaten down, torn out, yet still it grew against the odds. Once upon a time, life broke through where no one thought it possible. In 2050, forests round me flourish. Leaves grow and fall in the cycle of life. Wildflowers bloom in fields where sunshine glows, and solar panels drink up its unending energy. Years ago, this place I call home was in peril. Once, peace was a resource that was running out, but it did not wither and die. No, the children of the children grew up and took it hand in hand with care. A new generation was born, and with it new ideas, new hopes, new dreams, new visions. The civil war that humanity fights is not over, no, it seems never ending. But the fighting is slowing, the rain of bullets lightening to a drizzle as a new age turns the corner. All this I see from my post, a world tree keeping watch, as always. There will be people who want to turn the world back to the way it was in the ages of oppression. There are still those who would like to chop the newly planted forest down, only to replant it with their own ideas, their ideals. But in these rolling hills and forests that come alive in the fall, we are paving the way for a new world, where love is love, and we know that the earth is our home to take care of. Hands are held in times of need, and the young people that Vermont was losing years ago have returned to find new opportunities in a land of prosperity. We persist, adapting to changes and evolving as we always have to be resilient in the face of adversity, for the world will never be perfect. In a perfect world, what would the meaning of life be? In a perfect world, we would have no reason to live, no passion, no goals to strive for. So in our state, we accept the problems, the challenges, the fear, and use them to fuel our dreams. In Vermont, we lead the way, set the norm, act as a symbol of good in the world. For us, the future is what matters, and we continue to fight for it. My trunk is tall, my branch is long, my roots reach ever deeper. I am the emblem of Vermont, and I am only growing higher as the world is born anew.
Let's see, we have Don Hooper. Is there anybody else that I have left off the list that has come to read? Because people change. Jim, did you want to read?
I'll read if these people will put up with it.
Well, I think they would put up with it.
Okay?
Would everybody put up with it?
We have to bring it to a vote.
Right.
We've done away with town meeting in Duxbury, where I live. I'm Jim Lingle. I started teaching in Vermont in 1972. I met Bill when I was, we were all social studies people, social studies teachers, along with Senator Mark over there and lots of others who came to Vermont to do good work. I'm back here and retired now, and I'm reading to you. I'm a poet now, Gus. I write one poem each morning for my sanity. I fired my therapist. I read to you from the Vermont VT Scooper from April 1st, 2050. First article, Vermont schools rank #1 in student satisfaction. Results from the 2049 version of the National Student Satisfaction Survey are in, and Vermont places in the top 5 among all states in several categories. Vermont students report that they received closer attention from their teachers. They were more challenged by the curriculum. and found the school a safe and healthier place for them. Governor Jezebel Sanders attributed Vermont's improvement to the reorganization of school governance passed in 2030 after 6 years of recrimination and fights. The overhaul of the tax and finance system followed in 2032, the statewide teachers contract, and all these changes, said the governor, have made our schools more professional, our budgets more predictable, and our resources richer and more equitable. Also, Vermont now ranks third in SAT scores, fifth in per student resources devoted to public education, and sixth among the states in the percentage of students pursuing higher education. The governor credited the courageous decision in 2035 to expand the K-12 public education system to encompass everyone's education from birth through graduate school. Eat Vermont. Next article. The Vermont Agency of Nutrition, previously known as the Department of Agriculture, today announced the Eat Vermont Awards for 2050. In the dairy division, standard bearer Cabot celebrated its compressed protein product that has helped alleviate hunger around the world. All natural, organic, and made from the byproducts of milk and cheese production, this special product has spread Vermont's reputation for natural, high-quality nutrition projects. Second prize went to Jasper Hill, two of whose, I'm sorry to Vermont Creamery, but you were second. Two of whose cheeses now sell on the world market at a 50% premium over France's Roquefort and Yorkshire's Wensleydale. Play Vermont. Vermont's economy in 2050, explained Governor Sanders, rests on three pillars: invention, nutrition, and recreation. Outdoor recreation has served and continues to provide the steadiest growth factor in this triptych. Vermont lies within a day's drive of 4 urban metropolitan areas with tens of millions who have little opportunity for outdoor recreation. They come to Vermont. Back in the 2020s, Vermont's outdoor recreation economy was slipping. Giant, noisy wake boats made a shambles of our lakes and ponds and drove off the anglers, the kayakers, and the campers. Declining budgets for the Agency of Natural Resources let our forest trails deteriorate. Visitors stopped driving to Vermont and sought outdoor recreation elsewhere. The years 2025 to 30 saw the large ski cartels pull out of the Green Mountain State, selling their assets to a newly formed corporation called Ski VT, which was financed by a state bond and managed by a consortium of the remaining local ski areas in cooperation with the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, which actually found out that they owned all of the land under the ski areas. Working together, they consolidated the ski areas. They found new ways. The University of Vermont invented artificial snow. They redesigned our ski areas for a broader demographic, a lower price point, fewer 5-star resorts, and more ski schools. And instead of spending their marketing dollars competing with each other, they joined forces to cement Vermont and skiing in the eyes of the public. Any Vermont resident can now purchase a half-price lift ticket at any town clerk's office. Their profits in 2049 of $140 million were all plowed back into improving their facilities. Vermont villages. Next article, are on the upswing. Major changes in development laws and rules that began in the 20s, coupled with the Vermont Home Capital Fund and the Village Vision Project of the 30s, have focused attention on the Vermont village as the hallmark of a family-friendly state. The Department of Villages today issued its report for 2050. For 3 years in a row, the average QVL, quality of village life, has risen more than 5%. Vermont village evangelist Fred Lee Holmes credited the improvements to grassroots visioning in more than 200 villages that let the residents define the nature and purpose of their communities. They called for more pedestrian streets, less parking, more sidewalks, more housing within walking distance of the center. They restricted urban sprawl and welcomed affordable housing. So today we see villages full of folks walking, talking, eating, shopping, and relaxing around the village square. I'm going to skip the healthcare article and let you, that's good things happen. Secretary, this is election slated for November. Secretary of State Mark Ballot confirmed today that statewide and district elections would be held on Sunday, November 6th, 2050. As happens every school year, said Mark, each district will elect its school board, its facilities board, and its health board, in addition to a clerk, treasurer, and moderator, plus a senator and 3 representatives. You see, in 2040, Vermont rationalized its governance structure to increase democratic involvement, coordinate public services, and ensure equity. From a confusing conglomeration of 318 school districts, 251 towns, a dozen villages, 74 different legislative districts, 14 counties, each with its own officers, budgets, responsibilities, ranging in size from 50 to 50,000 students, Vermont created instead 60 districts, averaging 10,000 citizens each, some as big as 50,000, some as small as 1,000. Each district is built around a natural geographic patterns of living and working, and these districts take responsibility for education, public safety, roads, and health care. Most districts are grouped around a single high school with several middle and elementary schools that feed into it. There's a school board, there's a health board, and there's a public safety board. Each district receives grants for each of these purposes from 3 funds at the state level: the Education Fund, the Public Safety Fund, and the Public Health Fund, which is managed by a statewide board appointed by the governor and General Assembly for long terms. All 3 funds are fed by the fair share contributions required of all Vermonters. All the various different taxes were replaced in 2037 by a very simpler and more progressive system. Each year, each Vermont family and business contributes 1% of its wealth, that's all forms of wealth, and 5% of its income, all forms of income, to these fair share funds. And that's Vermont VT Scooper for 2050. I also have stickers for sale if anybody wants to. Thank you.
Would you like to? Oh, you brought the hat. Would you like a chair?
I'll try it without a chair. Good evening. I'm Al Boatwright. I was raised in Morrisville, though there's some dispute about whether I actually grew up there. I worked for the General Assembly for 31 years, the last 25 as the senior counsel. Good luck sleeping tonight. I've also done some work with my buddy George Woodard throughout the years. And the piece that I wrote is from the perspective of someone that supposedly is 104. And so just to, anyway, I'm gonna put the hat on and we'll see what happens. It is February 3, 2050. Today I turn 104 thanks to my regimen of 1, thinking only clean thoughts, and 2, investing in anti-aging supplements. Now, actually, although I'm obviously joking about the clean thoughts, I also have benefited from cutting-edge medical breakthroughs, particularly with regard to tissue and organ regeneration. I have many body enhancements that are state-of-the-art. Thanks to brain cassettes, for example, I speak 47 languages perfectly. Mon Dieu. My community compound has their own security force and on-call procurement troops who are experts in obtaining essential supplies when normal supply chains fail, which is pretty dang often. We have on site a modern operating room staffed by a surgeon trainee. Almost any conventional operation may be performed on site, with the operation being administered remotely by the appropriate medical specialist. Now, here are some of the other developments of the last 25 years. 1. Taylor Swift, buoyed by revenues from her omnipresent music in China and India, has been named the highest bidder in the auction to become the Secretary of the Treasury. Swift had, for years, been a major donator to the Department of the Treasury's annual fundraising rummage sales, where they rummage through your house and sell everything that's got any value. Before actually taking the job, she will have to step down from her position as Chief Performance Art Negotiator for the International Performers Union, the IPU, commonly referred to by his detractors as the IPONU. Next, Apple joined forces with X, previously known as Twitter, to create the back-ordered Exapple brand Pocket Nuke, a tiny portable nuclear power generator that provides clean power too cheap to meter. Next, crime is decreasing because so many people spend their free time having augmented reality virtual adventures at home instead of going outdoors where you might actually get mugged or something. Next, only domestic violence is on the uptick, mainly as a result of warfare among siblings over possession of the family electronic devices. Usually the siblings join forces to disable the parents before focusing their more deadly acts on each other. Next, thanks to advances in virtual sex technology, birth rates have dropped to historic lows, and there's talk of banning certain sex-related appliances, programs, and apps. That was a sad day when I heard that. Anyway, next, the sports world has been on edge as the Splendid Splitter contemplates reactivation. Now, this part is true. When baseball legend Ted Williams passed away, his son took measures to freeze his body in anticipation of future technology that might allow a reboot. Now, a reconstructed Williams is ready to play, according to sources, but he insists he will never play for the dang Yankees, who happen to have acquired this year's only selection opportunity in the frozen dead player draft. Next, pursuant to a public petition process initiated by the cult followers of former President George H.W. Bush, a prohibition on the cultivation, sale, or possession of broccoli has been put on the ballot in 25 red states. Next, because on-campus learning was no longer cost competitive, American universities now function almost exclusively online. University libraries have converted largely to sites for the study of ancient forms of greenish book mold. Next, an industry task force, you gotta watch them suckers, is developing a common language that would enable humans to communicate with the newly landed extraterrestrial beings believed to have come from the galaxy commonly known as smugs. Smuggers seem to be trying to purchase the waters of the Great Lakes for export to other galaxies. The working group wants to develop the common language so as to make them negotiations easier. Next, personal travel in the FUS, the former United States, is mainly by means of small aircraft that resembles the vehicles flown by the cartoon Jetsons. They don't need wings or fuel because they've got a clever magnet-based propulsion system that makes fuel-burning engines a thing of the past. There is a bug in the system, however. It's vulnerable to being smashed by small metal objects, such as nails and bolts that are drawn into the air by the powerful magnets. Wolcott, Vermont Select Board has banned the sale of land or dirt located anywhere within the town's boundaries. Apparently, scientists at Dartmouth College divined in 2040 that a large percentage of the earth in Wolcott was in existence before the Big Bang. Board members maintain that the town may elect to ignore a court order that prohibits the prohibition of land sales, since the court arguably would have jurisdiction only over property created after the Big Bang. Getting near the end here, folks. Florida has prohibited the teaching of science in elementary and high schools in order to prevent the woke, willful, and wanton dissection of frogs. Further, Florida's elementary and high school teachers have been ordered not to allow the use of the words climate change. Vermont now has a population of 5 million, most of them new residents living on property recently exempted from Act 250, the lands, you know what that is. Anyway, the state has competed successfully for the privilege to welcome 10,000 international refugees every 5 years, and accordingly has a varied and burgeoning workforce. In addition, Sea Rise refugees from Massachusetts have swarmed into the state, the result being that Harwood Union High School is now pronounced Howard. Many Vermont properties vulnerable to flooding now have elevator foundations that raise the building up to 35 feet in the air by use of a simple switch. Other properties employ the rubberized flood-proofing techniques developed to allow Boston to function despite being underwater during the yearly king tides. And finally, the flood-plagued Montpelier Post Office has been relocated to the newly privatized Hubbard Park Tower. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to wrap up with Don Hooper reading something entirely different.
We want to acknowledge Billy, who got this project going. So I ran into Bill Mayers a couple of years ago, or a decade ago, on the street, and I said, Billy, what's your next project? And he said, well, I'm going to do a book on Vermont humor, but only if you'll color it, illustrate it. So he's been a kind of best friend, best buddy, nag, mentor for about 40 years. And when he cashed out a year ago, he had this book that came out actually the week that he died. He took advantage of physician-assisted exit, and it's a magnificent memoir. He had this other project that we're working on right now in the chute, on the conveyor, but it wasn't. It was only halfway, and Chris and Jane have really brought it to fruition. And tonight, I think it's been fabulous to listen to the push and pull of what Shaw said. The optimist believes that we live in the best of all possible worlds. The pessimist fears that may be true. So we had that tension all the way through these wonderful poems. Gus Speth, for example, when he was teaching in England some while back, he had a student after he talked laboriously and filled with data about climate change and its perils. The student said, I don't believe climate change is real. And Gus said, climate change doesn't care what you think. Anyway, so I ran into Bill, and he cajoled me into doing the pictures in this book that came out a couple years ago, and which Samantha Colbert very kindly published. Most of my stuff is kind of hacking around. It's bug-eyed characters. It's not Ed Koren, it's not Jeff Danziger, it's not anything serious. And so I was a little handicapped in this magnificent book because the essays are, for the most part, pretty serious. There's a few, cornballs like Bo wrote, but that was magnificent, Al. And the consequence is that anything that had any humor in it from the drawings that I did, they got taken out or shifted in a. So Al's picture of the post office in Montpelier moving to the top of Hubbard Park got moved 100 pages away from his essay, but that's okay. So I'm just going to recite a little tribute to Bill because he's not here to defend himself. Bill Mayers, that mischievous Texan, that smug wannabe comic who wrote Real Vermonters Don't Milk Goats with Frank Bryan? Well, in 1983, I was that back-to-land hippie who did milk goats. I was trying my darndest to fit into my adopted Vermont. Bill comes along and scarfs up fame and riches, peddling 70,000. Where is this book? This book was so bad, I fed the rest of it to my goats. 70,000 cheap shot books making fun of invaders like me who thrived on growing kale and milking goats in our rural Vermont utopia. Full disclosure, I've known Bill for only 40 years, half my life, just turned 80. So I don't know everything about him, just enough to be dangerous. Most of what he says in this book, that's this one here, this is book number 20. Talk about a prodigious worker. Most of what he says can and will be held against him. A master of ceremonies introducing Mark Twain in some forlorn frontier outpost a century ago quipped, "I know only two things about Mark Twain. One, he's never been in jail. And two, I don't know why." Feels like Mayers to me. We expect Bill, as storyteller and fisherman, to stretch the truth. Yep, storyteller, fisherman. But in this aptly named memoir, Lucky Bill forgoes the tempting whopper. He eschews hyperbole and mostly sticks to the truth, which is good news for us because we're not having to be distracted by the need to sift humor from insight. There's a ton of insight in that book. We can curl up by the wood stove and absorb wisdom that Bill has gleaned from his excellent full throttle life. Bill is not the iconic, laconic Vermonter he reveres. Instead, he's a closet-driven Calvinist. But his unpretentious, understated persona saves his creds. He knows he was born on second base, and he doesn't squander his leadoff double. During his childhood family travels, not a moment was wasted. You imagine the family station wagon. Not a moment was wasted as Bill devoured a smorgasbord of history. The French, Russian, and Chinese revolutions, Indian independence. When he finally got to Harvard, they only exacerbated his scholarly curiosities. Outrageously productive in all he had decided to undertake, there's an authenticity about Mayers that he just can't cover up. When Bill does a thing, he does it fully homeworked, legs pumping, brain grinding, annoyingly quickly. Bees, brookies, beer. They're all gorgeously on display here in the book. And as Mayers trots out this marathon of his life, singing bass every step of the way. In January of 1985, when Bill and I met for the first time, we were freshman legislators in the State House in Montpelier. He from lofty Burlington, I from hayseed Brookfield. That chill January morning, the Free Press decided to ran a puffy front page gotcha story about how many odd ducks populated the incoming crop of lawmakers. The Free Press predictably saluted humorous Mayers for writing goats, while indicting me for milking them. But being people of immense goodwill, Mayers and Hooper, we submerged our divergent worldviews and became really good friends. Now, turning through his 9th decade and fulfilling the hypothesis that an unexamined life isn't worth living, Bill is tidying up in his 20th book. From his father, he inherited the phrase, "The steam that toots the whistle never turned a wheel." Perhaps that explains Bill's reflexive modesty. Bill's fluency makes storytelling look easy. He has a gift for showing, not just telling. Heartily believing the adage, there's no such thing as writing, only rewriting. I congratulate Bill on the meticulous hard work that produced this enthralling odyssey, and it really is, it's worth asking Bear Pond to carry more, get it. It's a wonderful read. In many collections of his poetry, Robert Frost entices the reader to join him as he moseys out to clean the pasture spring. You guys all know this. Frost suggests he'll only stop to rake the leaves away and wait to watch the water clear, I may. I shan't be gone long. You come too. With this memoir, I think Bill is joining us to explore our own pasture spring. Try some self-reflection, tidy up. Along the way, he demonstrates the fun and joy of reliving some experiences that are really memorable. It's not so hard. You come too. Sorry.
Was Billy the big street teacher?
Oh my goodness. Well, would anybody like to throw a bomb, anything, for people, or ask a question, or just have a comment? We do have some cider and cookies in the back. We hope you'll stick around, and also, I'm sure all the readers would be happy to sign your books, wherever you choose to have them signed. They can do that back there, or you can just nab them now that you know who they are. But does anybody have any thing that they'd like to say before we sort of break up into nibble time? Thank you all for coming. We really